Hello everyone, my name is Duchara Moody and I am a sophomore here at U of I majoring in middle grades math education, and I am also an intern for CITL. And here we have some lovely UIUC scholars, and we're just going to give them a chance to introduce themselves, saying their name and major. Starting with you.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeremiah Jordan. I am a junior majoring in dance, pursuing a minor in business. I'm an Allinet here. I'm part of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and that's just a little bit about me.
How y'all doing? My name is Sadiq Kobenfemi. I'm currently a junior here studying kinesiology on the pre-physical therapy track, and
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Chrissy Payne. I use she, her pronouns. My major is community health with a concentration in rehabilitation and disability studies with a minor in music and vocal performance.
Hello everybody, my name is Josiah Bradshaw. I'm a senior here majoring in kinesiology with a minor in psychology. A little bit about me is I'll be going to Washington University in St. Louis for physical therapy school.
Hi everyone, my name is Tati Scape. I'm currently a junior majoring in financial planning.
Perfect. Nice to meet you all. In this session, it will center the authentic student voices as they explore questions faculty, administrators, and peers are dealing with, and it will basically be based around AI. So with that being said, the first question that we have here is, how is Gen AI changing the way students learn, write, and problem solve? And I would love to hear from everyone, but who wants to go first?
I can go first with that one. I feel like AI kind of is a tool, but I feel like it becomes an issue when it becomes the main problem solver with everything. Like, I feel like when it comes to individual problem solving, I feel like it kind of hinders the person's ability to do things on their own because they're having something else think for them the entire time. So I feel like that kind of causes an issue with the person's ability to develop their own problem solving skills and techniques. So I feel like it definitely could be beneficial when it comes to maybe little things here and there, like, okay, how do I fix my toilet? How do I fix a sink? How do I go about this and that? How do I go about writing a certain thing a certain way? It's beneficial when it comes to teaching in some regards, but I feel like when you do it and you say, okay, take this and do this to it, write my paper for me, do this, that's when it becomes like, okay, you're not using your own autonomy in order to get something done, but instead relying on something else.
Yes, I definitely agree with that.
I would, go ahead. Okay. I would pick up, sorry. I would pick up off Sadiq. That's your name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, AI is a tool. Sometimes I use it, but I specifically ask them like, hey, give me advice on this topic or that topic, or brainstorm, ideas that I can't think of. Like, my brain does not malfunction on homework. Other things that it malfunctions, it doesn't do its task that I want it to do. So yes, I do use AI, but in proper ways. And agreeing with him, some people do be like, oh, do my work for me and, put it in this format and make me sound like a student. And it's like, come on, guys, we're at a, educational level. We can be accountable of ourselves, write your paper. Teachers want your authenticity through your papers and through your knowledge, because, they have checkers to, evaluate that those are not your words. So that's why I work.
Similarly to what you are saying, I would also have to agree. I've seen and read so many articles about how the younger generation, elementary, middle school, and high schoolers are losing basic knowledge, foundational knowledge, like, kids not knowing how to read and write and not knowing being able to solve basic math problems on their own without utilizing AI. So with that, I would say AI is an accessory, not a necessity. And we need to teach ourselves, because since we are the generation bringing it in, how to use it, when and where to use it. There's a time and place for everything. And I believe for the younger generation, especially, we should take it away from them so that they can build actually like a foundation in everyday, life skills. And then once they actually get to the high school, collegiate level, okay, this is how you can incorporate AI in your life if you choose to. But it is accessory, not a necessity.
I definitely love that, like you said, take it away from them for now so they can like develop as their own selves as we had that opportunity to. Because like, we have AI now, but we're like older and we had that chance to like learn personal development and how to do certain things on our own. Right. And now they're starting at a young age relying on things like AI, which is not very beneficial. So I definitely agree with that. Artie? So that's you.
Yes, I would go off of basically what everybody else is saying. I think also people don't understand that this is a robot, it isn't 100% accurate. It's times where I've used it and there's been fake websites and I have to cross check and it's not right. And I could probably use it to help me with a quiz and the answer was wrong. I also feel like using AI too much or abusing it avoids like human interaction. So when you need help on like a paper for a class, and you're asking AI. Well, AI doesn't know what your professor is looking for. So I feel like also utilize like your professors, your teachers, tutors as well to help you be more beneficial what you need to do because AI isn't 100% all the time. So I would definitely tell people to use, the resources that you have from like your school and like actual human beings before you rely on ChatGPT or AI because I feel like that should be the last resort.
Yes, I definitely agree with you all. The next question is where does innovation and academic integrity intersect or clash?
I think that it clashes when students stop using it as assistant and use it to take over the whole assignment or whatever they may be doing. I was very against using AI like my freshman year when it started being like getting known about. I was like, I'm not gonna do that. That's cheating. But when I realized that you really can use it as a tool and as like, okay, what am I missing from my essay? Like, what can I add to it? Things of that nature instead of here, this is the prompt and write it for me. Like that's when it starts to clash because you're not getting any benefit from it outside of a potential good grade, but morally and like mentally, like you're not benefiting from it at all. So
Okay, I can go on that. To your point, I would agree with that. Like, I just think when it comes to not even honesty, but just when it comes to personal development, like kind of what we always saying in the prior question about how it impacts just a person's ability to do certain things, and to Jeremiah's point about taking it away just for a set amount of time so that they can actually develop during that developmental stage and learn how to do things on their own and think for themselves. And, because at that point in time, that's where you're really learning who you are as a person. And if who you are is just relying on AI, it's kind of like, okay, like who are you to an extent? So I definitely think it's something that needs to be monitored. And when it comes to like academic integrity, to your point, at first I was the same way. Like a lot of my friends were using AI and I was like, nah, like I'm a dog, I'm gonna get it, I'm gonna do it by myself. And then there came a point I needed, some extra help. So I kind of used it as, okay, not do my work, but help me with it. So if I don't know how to go about certain things and if I don't know how to do certain things, I can have that to kind of lean back on. Because even as somebody studying health, you can only go so far with using AI. Like I can't ask AI to do my lab report for me, or I can't ask it to go through a practical for me. So it's like, okay, instead of having AI try to do that for me, how can you help me study for it? How can I prepare for it better? I feel like when you allow it to, like you said, be an accessory, that's when it's beneficial. But when you rely on it and force it to become a necessity, that's when you're hindering yourself in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Precisely. And just picking up what he said, I think everybody like made valid points. It just gets to a point where you start to lose your humanity. Like it goes above academic integrity because if you're using it to do your academic work, what about in your professional setting in life? Depending on what career field you decide to go into, you can't have AI. For example, I'm a dancer. I can't use AI to perform on stage and help me with choreography. I'm gonna be stuck like Chuck trying to use AI. Or what if you're in a position where you're being put on the spot by your boss and you have to have a PowerPoint ready in 2.5 minutes? What you gonna do? You can't always have AI to be a crutch for you. At some point you have to be able to stand on your own and be about your business and handle yourself accordingly. It's getting to a point where AI is being overly used.
Yeah, I would agree as well because my major is financial planning, so I'll be going to wealth management and helping clients. So when I do client presentations and if a client has a question for me that I need to answer, I need to be able to know that right off the spot because if I'm like, oh, like let me look on ChatGPT, then that just makes me not look as trustworthy as an advisor. And they were just like, well, I could do that. I could have did that at home because that's what their family wants to help assist them. And I don't want them to think that, I'm just relying on ChatGPT to help them when I should just be relying on like my personal intelligence because it's just like, I've worked hard to be here. I've worked hard academically. So it's just like, we're very knowledgeable as human beings. It just, we need to trust ourselves when we get in certain positions to do things.
Do you think?
Oh, I agree with everybody. I just took it right out on that. Like use AI to your best extent, not like, what Taki was saying, like it will prove your humanity. Like you can't ask AI about like homework and all these other, habitats that's going around and everything. Like, how are you able to project yourself like fully? Like, how are you able to talk to your friends without AI? Like, girl, AI, like. Because I do agree with Jeremiah, it is overused and people have to use it for their extent. And it's just like you can kind of see the difference when somebody's being real and somebody's using AI. You can just right off the dome.
Definitely. I actually want to answer this question as well because it's a really good question and it somewhat connects to me. So I personally, like, my goal this semester is to get all A's, and I feel that the way that innovation and academic integrity like clashes and or intersects is when somebody is trying to like overachieve and they don't feel like that they have the ability to like take everything in as well as make sure you're getting everything in on deadlines, and you just start to feel overwhelmed. So then you feel like, okay, let me ask ChatGPT because I need to turn this in, then I need to go study for this test and then go do this and then go do that because you're trying to maintain your grades. And I feel like that's when they clash because it's like we know that we have that option to go rely on ChatGPT versus like back then. I sound old, but like some years ago before AI, like we didn't have that option. So it's like, what did we do then? Like, how did you handle all of those and juggle all of those things then? So I feel like that's definitely a time where they can clash because honestly, in college, people are worried about their GPAs. They want a really high GPA or they want all A's, and it's like it's kind of hard to do that when you're also balancing life and there's so many things on top of each other. So I think that's a time where they can clash. It's just all about how we use it, as y'all stated. I also see there is a question in the chat, but I will ask that after my next two questions. I'll come back to that one. So the next one is, what skills do students believe matter most in an AI-focused world? So, what skills do students believe matter most in an AI-focused world?
Well, I know one thing that it's not. A lot of people have horrible communication now because they are always going to chat, and that it's just like it's tech is everywhere, so it's a lot easier to text somebody than to have a face-to-face conversation, and even like emails and things of that nature. I know personally, I go to chat to like help me make my emails more professionally, especially if like has to do with me applying to schools or a job or something like that, or talking to professors. I always write the email, but I'm always like, okay, how can I make this better? How do I make it more professional? And that just relied on too much, it can take away from your own ability to think those things through. So
Definitely.
To your point, I feel like a skill that is teaching is kind of going off what Chrissy said earlier about using it like AI checkers and stuff like that. I feel like with those in place, I feel like a person's ability to use discretion and a person's ability to use it whenever it makes the most sense, because now you can't just rely on ChatGPT or not even just ChatGPT, but AI. You can't just rely on that to write everything now. So it's like, okay, how can I, instead of having to do everything, how can I use it as more of a tool? So I feel like having balance with it is really the important thing about it, because in a sense, it's good to know the resources you have. And it's good to know that, okay, if I can't figure this out, I have somewhere to go. But it's really just about knowing when the point to go to it is, like knowing okay, if I can't get this done, I'm gonna go to AI, and I'm not just gonna go to AI just because I have it and I can.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like just having the discretion to do that. And you know, I noticed, at least I don't know about other people, but at least for myself, when I encounter like a more difficult situation, I'll be going to AI. I gotta go. I'll be like, you know, this and this happened. What do you think is the most, you know, productive way to go about it? And you know, it gives benefit. It, in my opinion, it gives like helpful tips about certain things, like about how to go about a situation, especially if it's a situation you may have been wrong in or whatever the case may be. I feel like it's very beneficial in that regard. So I think, yeah, to that point, I just think discretion and kind of understanding when to use it and how to use it is a skill that is obtained through it.
I like that.
I think I would argue, I think everybody made good points, so I got up. I think I would like to ask that rather is authenticity. Like even in the midst of you using AI, knowing when like, okay, yes, I'm allowing this software to help me and assist me, but when is my voice going to do the speaking?
Yeah.
When is my voice, or when are my actions going to start speaking for itself? Because it does get to a point where it's like, all right,
Yeah, that's not me.
you know, this is computer generated.
Yeah.
It sounds like it doesn't sound genuine at all, and things like that. So just remembering, like, try to be as authentic, as authentic as possible when utilizing AI, whether it's for your papers, your emails. Like, I feel like our generation, and especially the generations to come, like with using AI, we're gonna lose like this concept of authenticity and humanity and the human condition. So I think that's important to remember.
I love that you touched on that because like we all say, we do all use AI. So when I do sometimes use it to like maybe change my wording, sometimes I'll just still stick with my wording because I'm just like, I don't like this. Like this doesn't sound like me at all. So I'm just gonna keep it, and it's not terrible. So we'll use it. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Just to back up what Jeremiah was saying, I think students what students think is important in the AI generated world is to be perfectionist and to present themselves in a certain way. And I think it brings insecurity of the way that they present themselves and feel like that AI can do it in a better way. So I think people should just be more secure in who they are and be more confident that, like, you know, you've worked hard to build the skills that you have, and AI, it doesn't have emotional intelligence. And I feel like the best way to connect with people is emotionally. And I feel like the best way to do that is just to be true to yourself.
Yes. What's this? This is great. Did you say something? Okay.
But I agree with everyone. I would say like retaining our comprehension and our learning ability, only because that can malfunction into something bad. Like, see everybody on the panel. Asking AI is not proving humanity. So when you're presenting on the spot, you're like and like chat can't help you now. So you know, so it's like
Don't do it.
exactly. You know, you got to be on point. You got to be off the dome, off of it. So you know, it's just proving the point that AI is winning, basically, like proving back to Jeremiah. And you know, it doesn't matter what ChatGPT, Divine, Gemini, they got all type of names. And at this point, we just need to like put it down and like actually do our work, because if you got into this school, then you know, okay, then like prove it, you know, like
I want to add on to that. I also feel like you shouldn't be hard on yourself when you don't know things because like you're human. Like a lot of times my professor's like, oh, if you don't know a question, just let somebody know, like, hey, I don't have the answer right now, but I can't get that answer for you. So it's just like, I feel like people that don't know the answer, they just automatically just revert to like ChatGPT. But it's just like, you know, on the spot, like, don't be mad at yourself because you don't know the answer. So you could just always go on like a reliable.org website and do just as good as ChatGPT.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Like, because nobody really wants to fail or like be wrong. But it's like it is okay to be wrong because that is how you learn. Like even from when we were kids, we didn't used to know how to talk, but now we know how to talk. So it's like it's different things like that. So really, like you said, like kind of just being patient with yourself and allowing yourself to do your own research and like going a further step to fully adapt and understand whatever it is. Because I was just talking about this to somebody with chat, they will give you a response, like one response. versus when we used to have to Google things, it's multiple things that you can like go through. So you're looking at one response that talks about this aspect of it, then another that talks about that aspect, and it just gives you like a more open mind of whatever topic that is, which is like very beneficial of helping you really adapt to it and understand. So I definitely agree with that. The next question and the last question of mine is, how can institutions create policies that are both ethical and empowering?
I think one thing that I've noticed a lot for like professors that understand that no matter what they're gonna say, people are gonna use chat. And what I'm starting to see in like syllabi is they're saying that you can use chat to an extent as long as you cite it. You know, if you're using it for an essay or a paper and you're trying to get some information and it's coming from chat, cite ChatGPT, because if not, it's just like you using an actual peer-reviewed paper, using that information and then you're not citing it. That's still plagiarism. So I think that has been a really good way to stop it from being outlawed, because we already know that's going to be used anyway. So it's just a kind of comfortable medium that I think, because, you know, when people are being told not to do something, they're always going to do more of it, you know? So this is like, that is at least one way where I've kind of seen it mediated in that way.
Like, and to his point, I think to even be more specific with citing Chat AI, Gemini, whatever you want to call it, maybe we as students or even professors and the researchers out there watching, maybe we can figure out a specific way to accurately, in the Chicago format, MLA format, how can we accurately be able to use this thing and have its own way of citing so that we know, like, hey, this is the student work, but they're getting this for artificial intelligence. Like, make it even more specific when citing AI or chat, whatever it's being called. I don't know.
I wouldn't like, picking off of what Josiah said, it's kind of hard to like go up to a person and read their syllabus like, hey, don't use ChatGPT. Like, person's going to do whatever they want at the end of the day, you know? But if you are proving yourself that you're at this institution, then, you know, like, be authentic and be like human. Like, this is what you came to do. You came to hop over barriers, came to go through the things, go through the ropes. So actually prove yourself that you can do it. So I think institutions should also take more accountability as well, because I feel like all the pressure is on the students and they're like, they can use AI whenever they want to, they'll do what they want. But you're the professor, right? You're the bigger person. I'm the student, you're the professor. So I feel as though it shouldn't always be framed onto students, because I know some professors that always use or also use AI. So I wouldn't say it also has to be like mainly focused on students. You know, so I would say accountability can be on both sides.
I agree. I love that.
shade.
Let's use AI to grade papers and
Block that too.
More than you know. Like, I'm also in the teacher preparation program, and we had a whole class based on AI, and almost half of the teachers like, yeah, use AI to help you do lesson plans and things like that. Because at the end of the day, it has its benefits. It's like, it helps you better time manage, because what if you have to do X, Y, and Z, and you got to do this too, though. So it's like, okay, maybe you can help me. I'm not asking you to do everything, but you can somewhat help me to get to this goal. So definitely. All right. What do you have to say?
Say kind of earlier from what I was talking about AI checkers, I would just say that's a good way for kind of, I mean, I feel like at this point you can kind of tell when somebody's using AI just by if you know somebody and you read something they've written and you're like, this is you. Like you can just tell. So I just feel like having an AI checker or some sort of verification to show like turn it in. I'm pretty sure turn it in is a pretty good one that shows like if something is AI or not, or if it's plagiarized or whatever the case may be. I feel like that's very beneficial, because then, like I said, it kind of limits the students. It limits the students. It limits the students' use of AI, because it's like, okay, if I get caught using AI, I know for a fact I'm failing. Like, you know, by having that kind of strict guideline of, okay, if you're using AI, you're done. I feel like that kind of sways students to not do it as much. So
Definitely.
I think that's very beneficial. I really think that's very beneficial. So I think that's a good way to kind of limit it.
I would say, I feel like professors know when some topics are harder than others. So I feel like, going that little extra mile, like, okay, I know this topic may be hard, but here's some like peer-reviewed articles that y'all can look at, or like some, I use Investopedia a lot for the topics that I have to do research on. So I feel like just providing some articles that can help provide more clarity on like certain topics will be a good way to prevent automatically resourcing to ChatGPT. So I feel like, professors should try to incorporate that more into their lesson.
I'm also going to answer the question, because like as a future educator, I am like worried on how this will go. I want to teach middle grades and eventually high school students, and high school students are gonna definitely be like, girl, I'm about to go on ChatGPT. But the way that I want to like, fix that, and as the question is asking, like, how can I create a policy that is both ethical but empowering? Really, I just want to make sure, kind of what you were saying, as a professor, what are you doing? So as a teacher, I want to make sure that I'm being an effective teacher and that my students do understand the lesson and or the topic. And just really kind of connect on them with them one by one to see like, okay, do you get it? And if not, what is the issue that's like confusing? But to also be ethical, I would tell them like, when it's times that I'm not there, which is like when it's time to do homework, maybe you're up at 11 p.m. trying to turn in this 11:59 and you need help, ask for help. And like I did say earlier, we do have like Google, but it kind of gives you a lot of options. And then that also goes back onto the time management. You have to turn it in by 11:59. You don't want to scroll through all these 50 million different articles to figure something out. And I specifically want to teach math. So there's different AI apps, not just ChatGPT, for example, golf. And you just literally take a picture of the question and they literally show you the steps on how to get there. And honestly, I do use that as of right now as a college student at U of I, because the math here is not easy. Yeah. So I do that well, but I do go by the steps and I understand like, okay, you got this from this and then this happened. So it's like I will allow them to, like, I will level with them and say, look, I understand it could get hard, so you can use it, but I just need you to, kind of try first. And while we're in class, I need you to really work with me and, you help me help you. So, yes.
I feel like that's a big thing. To your point, I'm going to finish up with just try first. Like, I feel like that's the biggest thing. Like, if you can sit there and honestly be like, okay, I tried. It's like, okay, go ahead. Like, then it's fair game. Exactly. If that's your first thought is to go and do AI, then it's like, that's the bigger issue. So I definitely agree with that.
Yes. So now we're gonna roll over to the chat questions. The first one says, do you know of students who are using AI just to do their work? What percentage of the student population uses it just to do everything for them?
Oh, chat.
One, like, yes, I know people who do use a lot of ChatGPT, but I think it kind of depends on the area that you're going into. Like me and Sadiq, we're both going into like kinesiology, trying to be physical therapists. Like you can't really cheat on anatomy. Like you can use it to help you study and stuff like that. But if you're going into a practical, you have to know that information. You don't have access to technology, so I can't say cannot say. So yes, I know people, but I think it really depends on like the field they're going to. Yeah. Because like I said, there's benefits and we do use it for some things, or a lot of things sometimes, but it kind of depends on where you're at.
I agree. I say students use it more so on general education classes, classes that doesn't really tie to their major, and they're always just like, this has nothing to do with my major. I don't need to know how to do this in my field. I'm gonna get by for now. I feel like that's the group of people that actually like cater more to ChatGPT just to get by in that class because they're more focused and putting their time into classes that they actually need. So if I'm thinking, you know, I'm currently in French. Well, I don't use chat for French because
Right.
but
I'm gonna give you an example. I had an oceans class.
right, ocean.
Ocean.
Yeah, ocean science. So I'm taking a retirement plan right now. I don't have time to figure out what's going on with waves and stuff like that. And when I have to figure out what author I read this client needs. So it's just like it's stuff like that where AI is like more prominently used. And I would say also like with kids, I feel like in high schoolers, they go into that chat.
Yeah.
I feel like not to put my sibling on blast, love her down, but I just hate to see her struggling in certain areas, and she wants to go to school to be a vet, and I'm like, listen, you know, that's not easy. Like, you know, you need to actually try, and I'm trying to tell her, like, you know, you have resources there. I know people that's here that's going to vet school and stuff like that. You know, I can like try to connect with like professors and stuff, like what resources they can like offer to her to help her and stuff. And I'm telling her, like, you know, be resourceful, like, ask your teachers, ask your tutoring, like, don't just try to get by, because getting by can only get you so far.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think one thing that you just touched on is, you know, there are people around you that may know this information too. But I think something, because, you know, ChatGPT and so many different variations are so accessible, like Google and things like that, it takes away from me just calling Sadiq, calling Jeremiah, hey, you know this information, like, can you help me out? You know, or if they don't know it, they could maybe able to point me to somebody else that knows that information.
Yeah.
And it takes away from our communication, it takes away from our like just relationship building. So
And I think for the most part, I can speak from all of us. We come from an older part of Gen Z where our teachers would put us on the spot. I don't know about y'all. I didn't have like a nice little projector. I had a light projector, and I was over there with the little dry erase mark on the little light projector, doing little math problems and whatnot. You know, and with me being a big personality, my teachers would always put me on the spot. So I'm coming from I guess you could say a learning environment. Hello. But you know, I would say that I think, like you just said. Oh, I can't be heard.
Does the microphone still work?
give it a second.
Okay.
Are we back? Hi there. Hi there. So as I was saying, I can't speak for the entire UIUC population, but I believe it's fair to say that everybody, I feel like on our campus at least, use it in necessity. It's not overly, well, hopefully not overly used. Like for me, I'm a dance major. It'll be quite hard for me to use AI because I have to wake up and go to ballet. I can't use AI for that. But when I'm in a gen ed and this gen ed is kicking my butts, and my friends can't help me or give me the answer, best believe I'm gonna just hey chat, you know. But I'm not using it as a necessity. It's a last resort.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody else is doing that too, because it's not good for the climate apparently. According to these articles.
That's another.
You know, according to these articles.
To your point too. No, I'll definitely say it's a lot of students do use it, not, and kind of to Josiah's point as well, it depends on what area you're going into and what major you are. I know a lot of people who are in pre-med and pre-health and even difficult things like engineering. My brother's an engineer, my sister's in that school, so it's like I'll ask them, do you all use AI? And they laugh. Like, when would I do that? Like, you know, it's a very time and place kind of thing too. I think it was Tati who brought up gen eds. Like, if you're doing a gen ed and it's like, if I'm doing pre-health and I'm taking a cooking class, it's like they ask you to they ask you to write like a journal entry on, I don't know, cooking from the 1700s.
Like, do a homework assignment about eggs.
Like stuff like that. When it comes to stuff like that, it's like, like, you know, maybe I could dabble a little bit in there, but to the point, I definitely think a good amount of the student population does use it, but because the thing about U of I and it being such a great institution,
Mhm.
the work is so difficult. Like AI can't solve all of it. Like it can definitely throw you in the right direction and it teach you how to study. But there's been times I would ask ChatGPT like, bro, how do I study for this practical? Like, I don't know what I'm, and they'll give me like a plan to start studying, breaking down what system I should go over and how I should delegate time to each thing. So I definitely think it's something that it could help. I definitely think it helps a lot of students, but in terms of relying on it, I feel like it's quite literally not impossible, but it's very difficult to rely on it as a student at the U of I just because of the workload and how difficult the work is, especially depending on the major.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've used it and still got stuff wrong. I was highly upset.
Right. Just live it.
Yeah.
Chrissy, do you have anything for that one?
Of course. I agree with everybody. I do know people who obviously use it like people are gonna, you got free of rights, you can do what you want. But I feel like people should use it in a proper way and not just be like, what do I say to my mom when she, made me mad? Like, girl, what? You don't know how to speak to your mother? It's like it gets to that point where it's like, let me take your tablet away. Let me take
It's
the phone. The mom is right. It's the phone.
The phone. Phone.
Yeah, and just like picking up over everybody. It's just I feel like chat just needs to be taken away. It's like just put us all in a room for us to like do our work without chat and let's see how we all function. Like if it's like a second and you need chat, we need to have a talk.
Okay.
Okay.
What I think we should do. Y'all remember growing up and when Nickelodeon had Worldwide Day of Play?
Yeah.
Bring that back to the beginning. Put the tablet down.
Shows like Word Girl and stuff like that. Like,
Super wide. Wow, crowd.
It's like we went in the wrong place. Yeah.
Yo, Gabba Gabba, like, I was it's the party to my family.
Okay, the next question in the chat is how did you learn to use AI? What approach would you recommend for learning to use it?
That's a good question. Girl, how did I learn?
Thrown into the wolves. I feel like when it comes to AI, it's like you just have all this information at like that's disposable. Like it's just there. You have all access to it. So I feel like there was no like, okay, this is how you use it. Now I feel like they're starting to be that type of like introduction where like, okay, teachers like, okay, this is how you use it, or this is how like we think you should use it. But I think when it first started coming out,
it was just like,
yeah,
here you go.
Yeah.
I would argue that I feel like it would get to the point where our generation would be the educators on how to properly use AI since our generation were introduced to it. Because to your point, and I don't think any of us was sat down and like, this is AI. This is how you go about using it. Like one day we woke up, there was Siri. One day we woke up, there was Alexa. One day we woke up, it was Chat. Now it's Divine and Gemini and
Microsoft AI.
Like it goes on. So I don't know, girl.
Yeah.
First semester in college, like my professor was like, "This is how you use AI. Might have to resource the AI, AI sometimes." So that was right off the bat. Like I didn't even like my coming to college. I don't think I really knew anything about AI, and also I was taking a coding class, so my tutor was using AI, and I'm just like, okay, so I guess this is a normalization. So that's when I jumped on it. But like I said, it's a tool, so that's it. So, but I was shocked.
I wish I was like you, girl.
I wasn't really shown how to. It was more so in high school. I took difficult classes, and AI wasn't really a thought. And even if it was just like, you all are. I was always told you all are too smart to have to rely on something like that. So that's how it was at first. Then I got to college, and it was like the first semester, everybody around me was using it, but I'm like, I'm a dog. I'm gonna take care of what I gotta do. I think my first chem exam, I'm like, yeah, I need that. I definitely. So once I started taking more difficult classes, it was just okay. How do I go about preparing for these classes? Because in the moment where you're taking a chem exam that's in person and proctored, where you don't have a watch on, you don't have your phone on, headphones, like even meta glasses, like you don't got anything besides you yourself, AI can help. Like AI can't help you in that moment. So
Not the better.
just consistently being in that environment where you're consistently put to the test about what you as an individual know. I feel like that's what kind of steered me away from relying on it. But it's different for me, somebody who's in health and somebody else who may be doing engineering or like all these very difficult things. Regardless, anything that you apply is difficult, but for somebody doing something more difficult, it's definitely harder to rely on it. And compared to somebody who may have not had a more rigorous major. And to Jeremiah's point too, like I definitely think introducing it as a tool and teaching people how to use it is more beneficial than trying to outlaw it. Because I feel like at first it was one of those things where the older generations were like, all right, if you use it, you're done. Like it's wrong to use it. But yeah, like we're I feel like not just our generation, but primarily our generation was like more accepting of it. It was like, okay, it's not all the way bad. You just have to be reasonable with how you use it. I feel like going about it that way and not trying to, because it's just human nature. Like if you tell somebody not to do something, they're gonna be more intrigued to do it. So it's like, and when you so when you teach them about it and kind of welcome it, then it won't be as the hype around it probably won't be as much. So I definitely think it's just something that our generation kind of has to take responsibility of and learn how to teach the younger generation that come after us how to use it as a tool and not as a necessity, like Jeremiah was saying.
Yeah.
But bring back them writer workshops. Sit for 5 minutes. Write me a story. Bring that back real quick. Percy Jackson, what he?
Yes.
Hello, York Diary. Come on now. Bring it back. Bring it back.
Did I read Magic Treehouse?
I did.
I love those books.
Magic Treehouse. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Native Son, anybody Native Son? Blue with eye?
Who was I?
Oh, never mind.
The next question we have is, when your teachers use AI, do they disclose and or cite it? No, they do not.
No.
I'll say that now.
And like it's gotta be used because I have a class right now where it's one teacher, 40, 50 kids in the class. We got essays every week, but she also has her own stuff going on outside of class. Like there's no way one person is like
Exactly.
grading all of them essays and stuff. So I don't know. It's definitely not cited, but
Yeah.
I think it depends on the professor because my professor, my freshman year for like a red class, she was reading them papers. It took her a minute though, but like she was reading them papers, like, and I thought like I did good on the paper. But she was like, no, like you go deeper in here and stuff like that. And like I took a journalism class, and she took it as if I was gonna be a journalism major. I'm like, this is like, but I think it just depends on the person because everybody do have a lot of things going on, but some people they enjoy that. Like they like to read because I feel like you can tell a lot about a person by what they write.
For me, I would say it's a little bit more difficult, but to touch on the question. Yes, I'm a dance major, but with this still being a research-based institution, we do a lot of research in the dance department. So yes, I do a lot of dancing. Woo! A lot of dancing. However, I also spend a lot of time writing research papers about dance or different topics I'm interested in incorporating into my own choreography and things like that. And my professors, we touch on the topic of AI, but because dance as an art form, like it touched so heavily on the human condition because it's bodily emotion, body language, and its expression. We try to avoid it. The closest that we got to bringing AI into dance was with Merce Cunningham. So he has no longer, but the Cunningham Company. Cunningham was a form of modern dance, and Merce Cunningham invented this software to help choreograph. It's no longer used to my knowledge, but that was the closest AI has gotten and to be brought into dance. But as far as I know, my professors, they be critiquing them papers. I can get a note with little red markers on it, girl. They be printing it out and everything. Like, we will
Revise.
literally got 5 papers due. Let's get over here.
I would say for me, my professors, not that I know of, this one professor. I was taking a literature class, and she would like use AI, but just like significantly. But she would show us like you can ask AI these questions, but she's not gonna be like tell them to do your homework and stuff like that. But she really encouraged us to use books, like actual resources. Actually go up on Google and like type up what are you doing or do your actual research, and they write all these papers, 15-page paper, 20-page. I'm like, dang girl, wait, just give us a second. And it's just like I'm glad that she was being real with us, because most teachers would be like, I don't care what you do, have your phones out, whatever, I don't care, I get paid to do here. Like, whoa, like slow down. But I'm glad that she was like real with us, because and just showed us who she was and what she proved to be here. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, when I first seen this question, I immediately said no, because like I said, as a future educator, I kind of have an inside look. Of course, not as a professor, but I know that teachers use AI. I just know that. I even have an auntie that's a teacher, and she doesn't use it too much, but I know she has chat. Like I know she uses chat, so it's like, and as y'all was saying this too, like y'all reading all these essays,
Right.
like y'all doing all this. So it's like, I'm not saying that they full blown use it. It's just very similar to us. We use it when we need to. So yeah. Next question is, everyone's talking about AI. What AI conversations or rules have you heard on this campus, particularly from staff, TAs, or professors that drive you crazy?
Okay, question.
Okay. Me personally, none. Sorry, right now.
No, you good. I would say not using it at all. Like that just, like I said, it's just when we're all human. Like somebody's like, don't touch the red button. You're gonna think about touching the red. You don't think about it at least. So I think trying to just tell them or trying to tell us as students not to use it at all, I feel like that backfires a lot. And when you have a situation where a student does use it because they genuinely may have needed it, and you punish them for that, I feel like that's when it kind of gets a little bit irritating, because it's just like you're trying to punish somebody for using their resources. Now, granted, was it their own original thoughts and ideas? No, but I mean, the whole basis of research is kind of putting together your own thoughts with other people. So I feel like when you try to punish somebody for using their resources, and like I said, it's a very difficult school. Like none of us here are flying by, at least if you are, but everybody here is deserving of being here. And we are here because we did use the resources we had available to us. So I think trying to punish a student for using their resource is kind of what drives me a little bit.
Because you wouldn't want them to do it. You wouldn't want them to not do it at all.
Yeah, like
that's the thing. Like sometimes it's like you don't know what to do. And so would you rather us just be like, okay, I give up and not do it, or go rely on our resources?
Exactly. You rather them give you something, nothing. So now I'm wait.
I agree with you guys to an extent. I mean, kind of just like everything else. Like, yes, use your resources, but it's the same thing as me, paying somebody to do my stuff for me. You know what I'm saying? So like, you should get in trouble for that. Like, it is like a form of plagiarism. But I don't like when teachers are like, don't use this at all, because it's a tool. You should still be able to do it and indulge in it to an extent, as long as you're smart with it.
Similarly to what Josiah just said, I don't know if y'all ever seen the movie I, Robot with Will Smith. Basically, long story short, he's a cop in like future. They got robots doing everything, and it's a murder case, and the robot did it. A robot can't kill a human. Come to find out, the robot killed the human. I think we're getting to a point where AI is getting too much. I believe there are certain classes where I'm like, yes, use AI. Calculus, use AI. Aerospace engineering, maybe use it. But there are certain classes and things where I think it's like learning how to ride a bike for the first time. If you fall and scrape your knee, it's okay, get up and try it again. There are a lot of classes that we do offer where I feel that AI really should, if anything, last resort if it is getting used. I feel like certain things can be trial and error. It's okay. Pat yourself on the back, just try again. Not indifferent, guys. I don't know. 6, 7.
if the teacher doesn't really want the student to rely on AI, the teacher needs to be like, what can I do so you don't have to rely on it?
You gotta meet them in the middle.
Right. Like, it's don't use AI. Okay. So,
Let me help you.
I definitely use AI the most in like those 300-400 level classes where like watch the movies 3 or 4 assignments in a week.
I'm gonna tell you what I was.
You know, but you also have 3-4 other classes that you gotta worry about plus work at school. So like the professors that don't want you to use AI, but then they give you a whole bunch of busy work, like you're not really helping the problem.
Also, professors need to give us grace because this is not the only class I take. You want me to? I got one semester. I think it's been a few semesters where I had to take 13 exams in one semester.
Ooh, girl.
Midterms, one final, and like 4 classes, and it's just give me grace and like if I need an extension, I really need this. Like, you know, I'm trying to put forth an effort. If you give me something to say, this is it, I can't give you no extension. Okay, I'm gonna go use AI because it's just like you're not giving me time. You're not giving me time to gather myself. Then I have another class with a paper due. It's just like I think we need to understand grace, understand like you're not the only class we take, and it's just like we're trying to do the best we can in this class, but also in the other classes we take as well. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would pick off of Tasi. I feel like teachers, once they, you know, take their introduction and go into a class, they first start off with don't use, it's like, well, girl, like pick us up some slack. You could also start with I encourage you not to, or just don't say it at all. Or, you know, pick up our book, read your lectures, your assignments, readings, all of that. You know, don't start with a don't because our mind is gonna be like, well, I'm gonna do what I want at the end of the day. And also, you know, teachers are not also noticing that we're human too. Like we're students, we have pressure, like the pressure is building here, knowing that this is the top 10 Ivy League school, knowing that we are in the top 3. So you're telling us don't use this, don't use that is not going to help us. Like, I'm not trying to clock tea, but I'm stating facts. And it's just like, it's like they're not retaining information like, okay, you guys are students and you guys have, yes, we are. We do have other lives and we do have to go back home. And are you going to pay back for this trip to go back home? Didn't think so.
Some of us pay bills with a job.
Exactly. That's one of my big things with like college students versus grade school and things like that. Because I had to like transition like my freshman year. Like, okay, wait, I'm like an adult too, and being an adult is like that's a job.
That's a job.
I to feed me. She can't make me food. Like she wasn't washing my clothes in high school, but like she can't wash my clothes if I needed her to. She can't wake me up for class. Like it's so many things that we now have to do on our own. Like that's another job. Like people have to pay bills. Like it's just so many things on the checklist on top of also being a student. So it's like it's just a lot, and it's like that's why I feel like AI shouldn't just be like X'd out entirely. It's just about how you use it, and it's about the restrictions and things like that. It is 2:53, and this is over at 3, so I'm gonna answer one more. I'm gonna ask one more question. And that question is, I'm trying to see which one I want to ask. I would like to hear your opinion on AI's trend to be overly optimistic. How do you see its toxic positivity impacting social development, especially in grade school?
The kids can't read.
The kids can't
read. Is it that person who commented that iRobot took place in 2035? How far are we from 2035? Hello, like we're not that far. The kids can't read. They don't know how to speak to people. And yes, COVID did play a part in that. I won't say that it didn't, but AI is not helping the case. I think as a whole, everybody everywhere across the seas and America, everybody put the phones down, look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, how you doing? Like have a conversation. Like speak to somebody. Like AI is getting way too out of control. We're losing the plot of the human condition. You know, that's a base. I hope we understand what that is. Is you know, like
they clapping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like we lose the chat, we're losing the plot, and especially as a dancer, it genuinely worries me. Well, what if we get to a point where people can't work because you have a robot being your accountant, you have a robot being your cashier, you have a robot.
Make a robot be a teacher.
Like it gets to a point where now we're losing connection not only with self, but with your neighbor, with your mama, with your sister, brother, cousin, auntie, uncle. I don't know. You're losing the connection.
Yes.
And now we're gonna be like Wally. Like Wally, right? It's like Wally, like
Yes.
I agree with that though. Like, I feel like it just impacts development, also impacts connection as well. Like having the ability to just formulate emails and formulate text to respond to people, because I've seen it done. It's kind of funny, you know, like when somebody texts like something long, like a paragraph, it's like copy paste, put in AI, see whatever AI says, they send it back to them. It's kind of like, well, that wasn't really. That's kind of messed up. So it's like I think really just having the ability to connect with one another, and to your point as well, like COVID did play a part in that. You know, having to be at home for a year.
And we were just on our phone.
When you were just on your phone, on your computer. Me, I was gaming a lot. I ain't gonna lie. Yeah, you know, like just being forced to go through that kind of, you know, of course, it kind of impacted how we do process things, how we do go about things. It did impact how, you know, people talk to one another, because it's very different when you're talking to somebody behind the screen to where you're talking to somebody in person. Because now in person, I can see your body language, I can see where your eyes are going. Behind the screen, especially if the camera's off, you don't know what anybody's doing. I used to set up the computer. I'll be like on the game, like while the TV's going. So it's like, you know, it definitely does impact, you know, human interaction, and I think it does to an extent, taking it for what it is. It's a tool, but it can also be very dangerous, you know, in the future, you know, taking away jobs, taking away career possibilities for people. You know, at the end of the day, we're all human, but when you allow something to take away the humanity of certain things, it kind of it puts people in a difficult position.
Definitely, yeah. I want to add on to mental health. And the mental health awareness. I feel like, you know, like AI, like you need to, like you need like human communication. I feel like, you know, when you're going through something, AI can't give you a hug, AI can't wipe your tears, AI can't, you know, help you get out of bed. Like you need human interaction, you need somebody there that you can depend on to help you physically, you know, get through hard times as well. I feel like what's going on is like little kids, they don't know how to communicate. And it's just like I feel like a lot of the younger generation are taking their lives because of that, because they don't know how to understand their emotions, because they're not going to people that experience actual emotions. So I feel like also like bringing mental health awareness, you know, like that's why it's important to like communicate with other human beings that are going through the things that you're going through, or who have went through the things you went through and overcame it. I feel like AI just falls short of that every time. So
yeah. On it, you know, like professionally, like I had an instance with my mom the other day. I told her, yeah, I've been using chat to help me with my physics homework because it's physics too and it's hard to take. And she was like, man, I really don't hope you don't use chat for PT school. And I was like, no, because one, it's something I love, but two, you know, I'm gonna actually be helping people in the future, and to be reliant on ChatGPT when I'm supposed to be learning all these things, anatomy, physiology, how to diagnose and treat things. Like if I'm relying on chat, it will mess up my ability to do my job and to better help people. And I don't want that to affect not only my livelihood, but my effect on other people as a physical therapist. But a lot of people don't always see it that way, and they are more reliant on ChatGPT because it's so accessible and easy.
Do you have anything to provide?
2 minutes, by the way.
Oh, okay. I would say, picking off of Sadiq and Jeremiah about just quarantine. I know that when I was born, I would also set up the camera too and, you know, go back to sleep. But like, what do I mean? Like you woke me up and I have to get out, and, you know, I'm not going to be like, hi, how are you doing? Like, no, I was always on my phone. I was so connected to the phone, and it's just like a distraction. And now as I'm like picking up the pieces in like my college journey, I have to put the phone down for me to be like my authentic self. Cause like Sadiq said, you got your camera off. You can't, you know, be reactive with the camera off. You know, you can't be your authentic self.
But you know, with everything that's going on, grace and kindness go a long way. When you see
Yes.
somebody struggling, help them out. You see somebody say, "Hey, good morning, how you doing?" Like, just be kind and nice to people and give people grace. That's all I have to say.
Yes. Yes, that's a great way to end off. Be kind, give grace, and talk to people, and put down the phones.
Put them down.
Like for small little things. And tools. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in today and listening to our students here at U of I. Do y'all want to say anything before we go?
Thank y'all for listening and joining me.
And please take care of yourself, take care of your mental health, please connect with people, and yeah.
Just be nice, spread kindness, spread love, peace and joy.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Bye. Ooh.